Ooh. Right, morning all. I did a little thing yesterday about my family history, and evidently there's a lot about family history, but one of the biggest things I found was some people might know about it and some people might not. The British government, in their infinite wisdom, decided to send orphanage, I use the word orphanage children with very, you know, in brackets as I call it, because there weren't orphans, a lot of people, and they sent the children all around the world, mainly to Australia, Canada, and some of the other territories we used to own, run, whatever you want to call it. And one of the things I did find was quite interesting. In the late 80s, my dad had a phone call from the Salvation Army, and I was quite surprised about that. Then he involved me in that situation for me to ring this number because we had some details about somebody in Australia trying to contact us. My dad was unaware of the situation, and it later boiled down to that a lady called Elsie Joyce was trying to contact my dad, and the only records I could find was evidently a former name of Teager, which is my grandmother's maiden name, and Tompkins, which is, of course, is when Elsie Teager, my grandmother, got married, she became a Tompkins. Anyway, cut a long story short, as you know about family history, so it boiled down to the fact that my dad, through the Salvation Army, confirmed that we had a half sister, or well, I'll call her a half sister, but you know, it's a sister, but half sister, same mother, different father. And in 1929, my dad was 6 years old, and in 1929, Elsie was shipped out to Australia, and of course, in 1929. Now, you might not be able to see that, but this is the Largs Bay. I think it's called the Largs Bay, L-A-R-G-S, Largs Bay, 1929 in May. And that was the shipping list. And all down here were the children shipped out. And on the back, in highlighted green, is my half-sister. Sorry, my dad's half-sister, which was Elsie. And she was shipped out. Quite a surprise for my dad, but not a surprise for my auntie, which is Auntie Hilda, Dad's sister. She knew about this and has never talked about it. I can't be bothered with that, and she's never said much about it. Indirectly, I found out various bits since then, of course, that there was a conversation, sorry, a letter written in the early 40s, mid 40s, 45ish, I think, just after the war, or just coming up to the war, just after. I'm not going into specific details. Anyway, Hilda knows it, and Hilda knew about it, which is my dad's sister. Anyway, cut a long story short, the good news is, or the bad news, I had the luxury of going there, and if people want to, I suggest they look up Kingsley Fairbridge Farm Schools at Pinjarra, Western Australia. There's loads of information, and there's been a lot of information over the last few years about this, and a lot of it is not good. Elsie didn't enjoy it over there, I assume, and she had some rather bad times, but you can look online rather than me try to explain it all. I dare say Mr. Kingsley of South Africa, who started this in 1912ish, probably had the right intentions to give people a better home, children a better home, rather than in a sort of poverty-struck United Kingdom. I had the fortune to go over there in 2010 and visit, but Elsie had since passed away, and I met her family, which is mainly Tricia and Dave, and I went over there for a month in 2010. I would say that's probably certainly within the top 3 or 4 of my highlights of my life. I had a fantastic time over there. They treated me that I can't explain. You know, like I was just they treated me very, very well, like a long lost friend, and I could say that. And then I also visited Fairbridge, and also these are all done up now. This is my album, and I don't know whether you can see some of those. They were cottage styles. They look quite wonderful at the moment, and this is 2010, and they've added on a few little bits and pieces. It's now more of an away camp for children, etc. It's not used as that. It was stopped in the 70s. They were still shipping children out in the 60s and early 70s, so it goes a long way. That's bloody heavy. And also, when I visited the school, or should we say the place, sorry about this, that there is the children from the Largs Bay, with a list of names including Elsie Teager. We can't really make out on that photo if she's in there. I've tried to scan it a few times and have a look, but she may be not, but that's what it was. What can I say? Well, if you read about it, it wasn't exactly a loving place. It was supposed to be. It had the right intentions, but I don't think no other country has ever shipped out their orphans. And funny enough, I was looking the other day into some family history stuff from magazines called The Countryman in 1951 and 54. And they were still advertised in there that they were sending children out there and asking people to donate money, £30 mind you, and that would help a child over there and to send a child over there, which £30 was a lot of money in 1951. I did take a photo of the adverts and they'll go in my file, but if you look for Fairbridge Farm School, the government did make an apology in 2010, I think, about sending the children over there. But the records are very, very slim, to be honest, very, very slim. I know when I went over there, and when I first went over there, it did upset me to the point of that I did actually cry, because when you see these lovely fine buildings that they were so-called put in, it used to be 12 to a dormitory, and used to have a woman or a bloke looking after them. Some, I dare say, were looked after well, but some weren't. Anyway, enough said about that. But if anybody's interested, look up the Fairbridge and you'll find it. There's a lot of talk about it, but it was quite interesting. And my dad was always fascinated by it up until his death. I would say Tricia from Australia did come to visit us twice, and she did meet my dad, which she was more than happy with, and I'm glad she did that, and my dad was more than happy to meet her. My dad's sister Hilda still hasn't spoken. She's still, to my knowledge, alive, and she's got to be 96ish, 96. I'm sure something like that. 96, 97. Excuse me. Anyway, I'll be off now. Thank you. And right, this is just a small little piece to camera concerning the orphanage and how the children were sent out there. I've just heard on the news actually, and I've been listening to it most of the day, about that the government should compensate the people who were shipped out there who were still alive after the Second World War. In other words, you're shipped out and you're still living after the Second World War, you get compensation. It's nice to hear that people get compensation, but I think compensation isn't really the question there. Personally, I think that answers need to be sorted, really. You know, why the hell from 1920s did we send our kids out there? And my auntie, as I call her, and my cousin Trish in Australia, all they wanted was answers, just simple answers, just simple family things. You know, why, you know, when they knew my auntie was sent out there had a mother, if you understand, because there is connections and whatever. Still can't get to the bottom of it, and why was she shipped out? and there was communication either way in the 40s, funny enough, as I says. But it just makes me smile in a sad sort of way, that they're actually looking at it now. But as I says, it was an interesting thing to find, and it was very sad at the time, and it still is. But just for those who do watch this and make any comments, well, please feel free. But I'll try not to leave this too long anyway. So this is just what I've added in at the start to try and explain a little bit, and hopefully it does. And if you listen to the news, you'll hear it yourself anyway. But thanks very much. Right, and that is a picture of Elsie in Australia that she'd sent back to her mum. She didn't know that she had a mum, but there's the skeletons in the cupboard type of thing. I have passed the original photos on to Trisha in Australia when I met her, and I was happy to give them to her, but I did copy some. I have a couple of her, and that's probably standing outside one of the so-called wooden shacks, cottages, or whatever you want to call it. Anyway, cheers folks.